the interest of time, going to be very brief, which is very unusual for me. Ask them, they'll tell you. My name is Robert, my pronouns are he, him, and his, and I have the honor of serving as Artistic Director and Executive Director for the Black Tulip Chorale. This afternoon we've heard, almost evening, we've heard from Carol, Claudia, and David, Josh, Alex, Ashley, and Ken about grief they've experienced in their lives and also their journeys through healing and remembrance. Listening to their stories helped me learn about more of them as friends and colleagues, and also made me think of those in my own life whose loss I mourn and whose memory I cherish. Hopefully, it has done the same for you. I'm going to briefly share with you a story from a trip to Hawaii this past Easter. My last day there this year was a rainy April Thursday. My dear friend Carol and I were to go on a tour at Iolani Palace where you get to go beyond the ropes into the attic and actually see artifacts up close and personal. Unfortunately, the tour was canceled due to a chemical odor from renovations that had spread throughout the palace. Even though I'd been on that tour alone 4 times already, I was angry I didn't get to go this time. I ended up going to the airport early, riding the bus in the rain, eating an overpriced and underwhelming cheeseburger inside the terminal, and feeling very sad about leaving. I was very melancholic about my time there. It's my happy place. It's the place where I'm happiest. When I eventually boarded my 10 p.m. flight, I was met by an airline attendant who asked me to switch seats in order for a family to be able to sit together. This was an airplane with a bathroom halfway down the aisle as well as in the back. I have diabetes, so I always sit on the aisle so with easy access to a toilet. My new seat was 4 rows away, but still on the aisle, so I agreed to switch. Upon sitting down in my new seat, my earlier melancholy came back, but now had morphed into a raging anger. See, the last time I'd flown to Hawaii was last June with 64 of them and friends from the Black Tulip Chorale. We were scheduled to perform at 2 of Hawaii's most cherished places, Iolani Palace and Kaihaʻo Church. My now former partner and I flew there a day early so that I could take care of any last-minute details before the rest of the group arrived. We had booked our flight months in advance and paid for seats right across the aisle from each other. It was our first, turned out to be our only, big trip together. Yet when we got to the airport, we found that our seats had been given to a family of 4, mom and dad and 2 teenagers. I had been moved 1 row back, and my boyfriend had been moved 6 rows up. Those of you that know me know that I can have a bit of a temper. While I did not raise my voice, apparently my eyes must have communicated my displeasure as to why my family seats had been taken by another family when we had booked months in advance in favor of a family that had booked at the last minute. These were not the kind of people you want to be seated next to on a long flight. After rattling the saber a bit, the best I could do was get the airline to let us board together. I was in group 4, he was in group 8. While we were boarding, one of the gates agents snapped at my partner for boarding with my group. I quickly disabused them of that error. The connecting flight was a little better. We got late into the connecting airport, had to run from one terminal to another. I then slumped into a diabetic blood sugar crash. If you've ever seen one, you don't want to. Not a very good start to the flight. Let's say I was very happy when we landed in Honolulu. Now here it was all over again. I had to give up my seat again, and I was angry, and I was hurt, and I was alone once again. I was tired, I was cold, I missed my dog, I missed my people back in St. Louis, and I missed the love that I had lost the previous August. It was a breakup that I had not taken well, always had a very hard time making deep personal connections with other human beings. When that connection is lost, the pain and loss becomes cripplingly debilitating. All of this was going on in my head and in my heart while two young Marines dressed blues passed my seat headed toward the back of the plane. Neither of them could have been more than 18, 19 years old. One of them was the height of my shoulder. The other still had the face of an adolescent, covered with blemishes. They could have been my children, for crying out loud. I'm 948. As we all settled to our seats and were about ready to pull out from the sky bridge, the captain's voice came over the loudspeaker. He told us that our flight would be carrying a fallen service member home with their family aboard. The usual chatter that you hear on an outbound flight ceased immediately. About an hour into the flight, I went to the toilet. When I came out, I happened to make eye contact with the man who was sitting in my original seat. He smiled, said thank you. I nodded, smiled, and went back to my seat with a sense of faith in humanity restored. When the plane finally landed, the captain told everybody to remain seated while the Marines escorted the family of the deceased service member off the plane. I saw a sergeant several rows ahead of me get up, and eventually saw the two young Marines seated in the back past my seat. But what I was not prepared for was seeing the family of the deceased pass me. It was the same man who had thanked me for switching seats with him and his wife. In an instant, I felt the tidal wave of emotions crash over me, the strongest among them being feelings of shame. I almost let my anger and my pain and my loneliness get in the way of the unimaginable loss and unspeakable grief that this man and his wife had been forced to face from out of nowhere. I never saw them again. I knew nothing about them other than what I had seen of them. So often on TV or movies, we see a family bringing a deceased soldier home. We see several family members, often dressed in formal black, lined up looking through the terminal's windows as the casket is brought on and off the plane. What I saw was a middle-aged man and woman of color, dressed in clothes you see any blue-collar workers wear. His wife wore scuffed-up tennis shoes that had seen better days and was wearing a windbreaker with a tear in the sleeve. He wore beat-up jeans and work boots similar to what my father had worn as a contractor for many years. English was not their first language. I spent the connecting flight as well as the next several days and weeks thinking about that family. I wondered what their lives were like, where they were from, what the parents did for work, why their child joined the service, perhaps to fund an education once they got out. Now these poor parents will never be able to see a college graduation, a wedding, a birth of a grandchild, holidays, birthdays, etc. Unlike all of the previous speakers, I have no idea of the identity of this young person who died. Yet, like all of the previous speakers, I will never forget them, nor will I forget the briefly fleeting connection with that family. One thing I took away from the events of that flight in April was to acknowledge that we all have the potential to care for each other, even in the most difficult of circumstances. And in doing, we can all give comfort in time of need, solace in time of pain, and hope in the time of grief. Mozart's Ave Verum Corpus ends with the phrase, Est nobis praegustatum in mortis examine. Basically, be a sweet foretaste for us at the time of death's trial. As a militant atheist myself, I prefer to think of it in a more secular and softer lens. If we as a society can build the habit of growing simple human compassion for each other in even the most smallest of struggles, imagine how beautiful of a world we live in when each of us eventually faces grief and loss, and being able to collectively cherish the healing that compassion can bring. We'd like to invite some of our alumni now to come up and join us for the last piece, Mozart's Ave Verum.